Okay, tech without borders, it's similar to without frontiers, and there's a reason why, we will tell you later. Tonight we will talk about climate tech, we'll talk about sustainability, we'll talk about human rights, and we will do this with two speakers. Here they are. First, MORITZ WALTHER. And second, FLORIANO Zini. Okay, now we'll do that boring part where we ask everyone, is it the first time that you're here at Speck&Tech? Can you raise your hand if it is the first time for you? Okay, fewer people than other times. Just for you, very quick introduction to what we are. This is how we started back in 2016, which means more than 6 years ago. With these empty rooms, the chairs were actually empty. Then, of course, they turned very full during the night, and this was later in the evening. No, I'm joking. This is 1 year later. We started gathering, we started having monthly meetups where we discussed about tech, where every night we have a topic and we face it from two different perspectives. This was 2017 that we went on, 2018, 2019, we actually hosted an event at the airport in Trento. Did you know there was an airport in Trento? It went on till 2019, we had events with 300 people. And then, of course, COVID hit, and we decided to become a podcast. So if you're into podcasting, you can go to Speck&Tech website, and there's also a podcast. Of course, it was because COVID was a shit, and we spent months staying home, and everyone was so bored. But now we're back. We are back with more strength and with a brand new team, more people that are helping us reshape the community, meeting regularly every month. And tonight, we are here for our 46th event. I'll hand the microphone over to Stefania to say a few words. The reason why today we call it Tech Without Borders is because we are collaborating with Informatici, senza frontiere, without frontiers. So, Stefania, tell us a bit more about that.
Ciao a tutti, vi rubo solo 2 minuti per presentarvi questo festival che si svolge la prossima settimana a Rovereto. Ad organizzarlo è Informatici senza frontiere, che è un'associazione che da più di 20 anni si occupa di progetti di innovazione sociale che hanno come primo obiettivo quello del superamento del digital divide in Italia e nel mondo. Lo fa esplicitamente in 3 settori che vengono chiamati per la conoscenza, in brevissimo organizzando corsi nelle scuole, ma anche per over 65, per l'utilizzo dello smartphone o per gli immigrati. Lo fa per lo sviluppo, andando a creare infrastrutture e andando a installare strumenti open source negli ospedali o in altre strutture complesse in Africa o in altri paesi in via di sviluppo, e lo fa per aiutare il mondo della disabilità, nella convinzione che le tecnologie possono aiutare ad avere uno stile di vita migliore alle persone più fragili. Dal 2015 Informatici senza frontiere organizza questo festival che vuole proprio indagare qual è un uso buono, inclusivo, etico della tecnologia e qual è l'impatto che la tecnologia ha sulla vita sociale. Quest'anno, alla 7ª edizione, il titolo è Domani un altro giorno e il focus sarà soprattutto sulla trasformazione digitale e sulla sostenibilità della tecnologia, intesa sia come sostenibilità ambientale che come sostenibilità sociale. Il festival si svolge da giovedì 20 a sabato 22 a Rovereto. Saranno oltre 26 conferenze, ma non sola. Tra queste parleremo di big data e di come le tecnologie ci possono aiutare a prevedere i cambiamenti climatici e a salvaguardare gli ecosistemi. Ci saranno con noi Antonello Provenzale, che è il direttore del CNR di Pisa, ci sarà Carlo Buontempo, che è il direttore del servizio sui cambiamenti climatici del programma Copernicus, e il climatologo Francesco Petitta, che ci parlerà di come le tecniche di intelligenza artificiale ci possono aiutare a valutare gli impatti climatici sia su scala globale che locale. Discuteremo con degli esperti se le tecnologie sono sostenibili o meno. Un esperto di etica dell'informatica ci aiuterà a capire se consumare meno bit ci aiuta a risparmiare o al contrario sono proprio l'utilizzo di più bit che ci può aiutare a salvaguardare l'ambiente. E così via, in molte conferenze. Vi dicevo, non solo però conferenze e talk, ma all'interno di Informatici senza frontiere quest'anno avremo anche un film, il film di PIF e noi stronzi rimaniamo a guardare, che in maniera leggera ci fa riflettere su come le tecnologie possono anche qui aiutare, ma avere anche delle storture. Ci sarà un comico, Parasole, che ci porta uno spettacolo dal titolo I consumisti mangiano i bambini, e farà proprio riflettere su come l'utilizzo di risorse in qualche modo va a condizionare il futuro dei nostri figli. Ci sarà un'installazione artistica di un artista visivo che è riuscito a creare una fotografia senza utilizzare le tecniche fotografiche, ma racconta la siccità utilizzando gli elementi naturali che la siccità porta. E avremo anche un concerto di Max Casacci, fondatore dei Subsonica, che ha campionato i suoni della natura e ce li porterà in questo concerto anche grazie a un visual artist. Vi aspettiamo. Bene. No, vi aspettiamo quindi da giovedì a sabato prossimo a Rovereto. Il programma è ricco, lì vi ho lasciato anche un sacco di volantini.
E anche all'ingresso sono un sacco di volantini, quindi prendete pure. Grazie Stefania. Oh, okay, I'll switch back to English just because. Tonight, after the two talks, especially for the people that are brand new to Speck&Tech format, we will have the spec. And also tonight, since we're talking about sustainability, and we have a lot of people that are either vegetarian or vegan or something in between, or other allergies, or they can't eat meat, or they don't want to eat meat, we have also cheese as well. Of course, there's gonna be also beer. You've got some testimonials here. So if you are into beer and chats and talks, and we'll have discussed all the whole night, of course we need to pay something for this as an association. That's why I hand it over to Giulia.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, we don't charge you with anything, but we ask you to support Speck&Tech, to get your help and your contribution to go on with events and similar. But how can you do that? You can do by donating and also purchasing the stickers, t-shirts, those nice t-shirts we are wearing. Look at this model. And they are really nice. This is the one for 2022. And obviously, we accept money in whatever form, sum up, cash, whatever you want. Kidneys are welcome too. Exactly, Satisface. And you can follow us and be updated with all the news events we propose with our website, Speck&Tech, speck&.tech, but also Telegram, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And most important, because in this website, in this lovely website, you can find all the previous events with the links, resources, presentation. If you're a student, they will be helpful for stuff you will have to do at university. But more important, if you're looking for a job, a position, something, here you will see who's hiring. And if you are a company, you want to talk about something you are really passionate about, you can also take advantage of this website to get in touch with us and propose yourself as a sponsor or as a speaker by yourself. We are really welcome to have new speakers and people really passionate about their passions. And so follow us at Speck&Tech, Telegram. I will say again, grab your phone, open Telegram, and follow us. And
Also, because right now, if you grab your phone and you go to slide.do/st46, or you go to Slido and you insert the code st46, here is where you can ask questions to the speakers. Apart from questions, you can also interact tonight. We will have a poll because you will be asked which topic you would like the first speaker should cover. So grab your phone, go to Slido, insert the code ST46. It's also on our Telegram channel, and you will be able to deviate the course, the path of the night. That's it, Julia?
okay,
Cool.
yeah.
We can start. Speck&Tech number 46. The first speaker on stage, Moritz.
Do I have to turn it on?
No, it's already on.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay, everybody can hear me? Yeah. There we go, now I can hear it too. Great. Cool. I'll begin then, yeah. So tonight I'm just going to give you kind of an overview of climate tech. So these are kind of technologies and companies working on the problem of climate change. So this might be a little bit less technical than you generally would see in these talks, but I want to give you kind of an overview of this. We'll also talk about some of the broad technologies and breakthroughs that we have to fight climate change today. But again, it's kind of an overview, right? And beyond that, I want to also give you a little bit of my own perspective on how you as a technology person can make a difference in the fight against climate change. Yeah, it's gonna go, there we go. Okay. So yeah, to begin with, I just want to give you a little brief introduction to myself and also the company I work for. We're going to keep it nice and short, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. But so just a few words about myself, right? My name is MORITZ WALTHER, but you can call me Mo. Everybody calls me Mo, much easier. Yeah, and so I have been here in Trento now for a little bit over a year. Originally came with the EIT Master's program. And now have the pleasure of staying here longer term. And so I work remote, though, for a German company, a German climate tech company. And so in the past, kind of my career was focused more on tech consulting. So I was working for EY and HP beforehand, so very kind of general tech roles. And kind of relatively recently decided that in my career, I want to work for a mission-driven company, right? So companies that are looking to solve a social problem in the world. And really what got me interested in this is a movement coming out of Oxford University at the moment called effective altruism. And so these people, they think that, and this is something I agree with for sure, that we should all be trying to do good in our lives, right? But they also recognize that we have limited resources, right? Time, money, whatever it might be, limited interest even to some extent. And so they talk a lot about how we can make the most impact with what we have available to us. So one part of this then is they look very heavily on career, right? So they published a statistic where they said that you spend on average 80,000 hours in your life working. So that's a third of your life. Another third of your life is spent sleeping, right? So basically it was just this idea that if in your job you can do even just a little bit of good every day, right, through your work, then over a lifetime that will really sum up to a whole lot. And that's really what got me interested in this field, why I decided I wanted to get into climate tech. There you go. So I want to tell you just a few words now about the company I'm working for at the moment. So this is a company called Ecolytic, and we provide digital infrastructure for banks to help fight climate change. Our core product at the moment is a carbon footprint calculator. So we analyze payment data from the end users of banks, right, to calculate a carbon footprint so that they can better understand their impact on the environment. And from there, of course, then we help them to, try and live a more sustainable lifestyle or do some offsetting, so try and change this carbon impact. Currently, we're live with 7 banks, including one tier 1 bank in the Netherlands. We have this feature rolled out to about 1 million end users now. And so that actually just happened this week where we doubled our user base. So that was a big step. And what we're seeing is that kind of across this user base, on average, we have around a 3% reduction in the carbon footprint, despite the spending remaining the same. Cool, so that's just a little plug there for Ecolytic. Now let's kind of get into the heart of it. I want to begin by telling you a little bit about climate change. So I think, everybody has heard of climate change today. I don't need to tell you too much about it, but I do want to make clear that climate change is due to human activity. It's already happening now, right? This isn't a future topic. This is currently happening. The climate has already warmed and will continue to warm. But I think, or I hope, that is pretty much clear to most people already. What I do want to kind of push tonight, though, is the idea that this isn't just, one problem of many. This is the challenge of our generation. This is the most important topic that we're facing today, right? And I want to make that a little bit clearer tonight. So I know, we all have other issues on our mind right now, the cost of living crisis, the war in Ukraine, right? These are all important issues too, but I think I wanted to show some kind of numbers to try and help you understand or try and, create a little bit of awareness about the effects that we'll be seeing through climate change. When we talk about climate change, we have kind of 3 different scenarios that we're looking at. So the first one is a 1.5 degree warming scenario, and this is the optimistic case, right? So we're already way past the point where there is not going to be any climate change. That's just not the case anymore. So what the world is aiming for at the moment is this 1.5 degree scenario, right? So even in this kind of best case scenario, we'd be looking at reduced crop yields of 11.1%, which will obviously lead to rising food prices and will push a lot of people into food insecurity or hunger. 20% more of the world is going to be exposed to tropical illnesses. So as the climate warms, kind of the disease carriers such as mosquitoes, their range will spread and more of the world is going to be exposed to illnesses. 17% of landmass will face extreme rainfall events like we're seeing now in Pakistan at the moment. And of course, other areas in the globe might have the exact opposite, might be facing extreme drought. So already in this 1.5 degree warming scenario, also the World Health Organization says they'll be able to, or predicts they'll be able to attribute 250,000 excess deaths to the effects of climate change. And to put this into perspective, people like to talk a lot about world peace, and don't get me wrong, it's definitely something that we should be aiming for, right, an important issue. But at the moment, actually, or over the last 10 years on average, the excess deaths caused by a state-armed conflict has been just 50,000 people per year, right? So achieving this goal of world peace versus, doing something about climate change, this is a 5 times multiplier on that. And this is the best case scenario. So we have also this kind of mid-range scenario. This is a 2 degree warming world, right? So in this scenario, we have between 800 million and 3 billion people exposed to chronic water scarcity. Crop yield will again be affected. So there we would see a reduction of about 14.8% from the baseline. 30% of the world will be exposed to tropical illnesses. 36% of the total landmass of Earth will be exposed to annual extreme rainfall events. So again, even worse. And then we have kind of this third scenario, right? And this third scenario is what we call catastrophic climate change. So this is a world where the temperature warms by 3 degrees Celsius or more, right? And these don't sound like big differences, these degrees, right? But under this scenario then, between 1 and 4 billion people will be exposed to chronic water scarcity. So this is a huge population, percentage of our global population, right? We'll see extreme economic contractions. So global GDP is expected to shrink by 18% in this scenario. And perhaps more importantly, right, the kind of poorest regions of the world, the ones that will be affected the most through climate change, that have the least that they can do about this, they'll be seeing much, much bigger contractions. We'd also be looking at a migration crisis, the likes of which we haven't seen before. So, I mean, we've been complaining about migrants in Europe for a long time, but I think under this degree of climate change, we would see a much, much bigger problem because 12% of the world's population, the global population, is expected to be displaced through rising sea levels, and this is just sea level rise, right? So this isn't even making, your area unlivable through, for example, the rainfall or drought. So we'd have a global kind of migration crisis on our hands. 29% of all species on Earth are expected to go extinct under this scenario. And then any one person on Earth will have an average 500% increased exposure to an extreme weather event in their lifetime in this scenario. So this is something we definitely need to avoid, right? And these are just the statistics I was able to find, right? Climate models are very inexact, unfortunately, and it's very hard to say with a high degree of certainty these kind of numbers. So these were just the ones where the scientists felt comfortable putting a number on it. Now, that sounds bad, but it might not be bad if we're headed for that 1.5 degree scenario, right? But what I want to impress on you a little bit tonight, too, is that we're not headed for that. So already we've seen between 1.1 and 1.3 degrees warming. So, we have very little kind of room to get to this 1.5 degree scenario, unfortunately, left. And when we talk about these scenarios, we're talking about the time at the end of the century. That's where we want to be temperature-wise, right? What I have here kind of on the left is a graph, and you'll see here in the red zone or in the red marked area, it will show the temperature path based on kind of the global pledges that governments and countries around the world have made. So these are the things they're promising to do about climate change, and that would put us on track to a 2.6 to 3.2 degree warmer world. Then above that in the blue here, we have current policies. So this isn't what they've promised to do, this is what they're actually doing about it, right? And this puts us on track to 3.1 to 3.7 degrees warming. And then above that, we have kind of the scenario of where we don't do anything, or there are no policies, which is still a possible scenario, because as you know, politics changes very quickly, right? And those policies can always be reversed. And if we do that, we're looking at a 4.1 to 4.8 degree warmer world. So really, any one of these three things puts us on track to catastrophic climate change. And that's why I feel this issue is so important. Okay, so now that we've kind of understood the issue, I want to think about where is this coming from, right? What do we need to do about it? And I think the first thing that we need to think about that is, again, to understand what sectors, what activity is contributing to that. So where is climate change coming from? What's contributing to this? Well, there's 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases that are emitted every year into the atmosphere. And 31% of that is coming from the things that we make. So cement, steel, plastics, our whole built environment around us. This is the biggest contributor. After that, we have electricity, so powering everything around us. Feeding ourselves is the third biggest contributor at 19% of 51 billion. So that is the agriculture, right? Growing plants, but also livestock is a huge part of this, right? Transportation is another big factor at 16%. But this is also just not just our personal, cars, commuting to work, that kind of thing. A big part of this, of course, is transportation of goods, so shipping through planes, trucks, cargo ships. That's a big factor here. And then the last one I have here on the list is temperature regulation. So this is heating, cooling, and refrigeration. So that's the breakdown. From there, then, I want to talk to you kind of about the technologies that we have available to help us fight climate change. And I want to introduce kind of a few concepts before we really dive into it. So the first is the concept of the drawdown. The drawdown is the point where the greenhouse gases in our atmosphere stop rising and start actually declining. And that's the point we need to get to, right, to avoid catastrophic climate change. We need to see a reduction, actually, in greenhouse gases. There are kind of two opposing views on what we need to be doing to get to this drawdown or to be combating climate change. The first is the Malthusian view, right? So this is an old idea coming from economist from Thomas Malthus. So over 200 years ago, he was looking at population growth, and he predicted that we wouldn't be able to feed ourselves, right, in the next couple years. So he really thought that we had reached kind of peak capacity of our population. And this idea, right, has been transferred to climate change. So he was at the time advocating, that we consume less, that we need to kind of shrink our consumption patterns. And this is obviously one approach to dealing with climate change. So the degrowth view is that we shrink consumption and production in order to save our planet. And the people who are in favor of this view, they advocate self-restraint, right? And they advocate heavy regulation to get us to that point. Now, kind of the diametrically opposed view to this, right, is the Solovian view, coming from the Nobel Prize-winning economist Robert Solow, and he advocates innovation in the face of climate change. So 200 years ago, when Thomas Malthus made his prediction about population peak, right, that wasn't the case. Our population has continued to grow. We continue to be able to feed ourselves, and the reason for that is there's been massive innovation in agriculture that lets us produce more with less. And so this is what he, or advocates of this view, believe we need to be doing with climate change, right? We need to come up with technologies that allow us to continue to live good lifestyles while reducing emissions, and we also need to be focusing on emission extraction technologies. So these are the two different views. I think in reality, we're gonna need a mixture of both of them, right? It's not just gonna be one or the other, it's gonna be a little bit of both. But I think as technologists, what interests us really is the second one, right? The Solovian view. Okay, so then we're gonna get into some of these technologies. So this is the part 2 where we have that poll open. So I'm gonna introduce you definitely to carbon capture technology, but if you'd like to go into the Slido now and take a vote, we can be talking about any one of these other fields that you'll see up here. I think with the exception of offsetting. I didn't get the slide finished for that, but anyway, so climate tech, right, so as I was saying at the beginning, is the technologies and the companies that are out to save the world, right? They are the real-life superheroes these days, in my opinion, who want to do something about climate change. Now, it's a super interesting space at the moment for a couple different reasons. Obviously, because they're invested heavily in this climate scenario, and I think that's worth a lot already. But we've also seen that climate tech is a huge growth area at the moment, right? So we've seen it's been crisis resistant so far. So with kind of the economic downturn that we're facing at the moment, venture capital funding has actually fallen quarter over quarter by 33% over the last 2 quarters. Climate tech remains one of the only sectors that is growing in venture capital funding at the moment. Same thing for hiring, right? We've seen in Europe a lot of the big startups have been laying off a lot of people. Climate tech continues to grow, is hiring people. And I also think climate tech is super interesting, actually, because in Europe, unfortunately, the reality is a lot of times we are behind the US, we're behind Asia in terms of creating startups and scaling these. But Europe is at the heart of climate tech, actually. So there are more climate tech firms in Europe than anywhere else. And at the moment, there's approximately 800, more or less, depending on who you ask. But it's becoming quite a lot. So I'm going to jump into carbon capture, and then we'll see the results of the poll to determine what the second field that we'll be looking at is. So the first technology, right, that I want to talk about today is carbon capture and storage. The reason I definitely want to talk about this is because I think it's the most interesting, most exciting, most promising technology in the fight against climate change. And just a little bit of kind of to the setup here, right? On these slides, I kind of always have this technology maturity model that you'll see at the bottom here. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, right? But it basically just says that as time goes on, a technology will continue to develop, right, from a kind of early stage R&D phase to all the way mature. And on the y-axis, then, we have capital and risk. So early stage technologies require more capital investment. They have a higher risk profile. As we're building that technology, more capital is required. And then at some point when we get over this peak, right, that technology begins to mature and get cheaper and begins to kind of hopefully find mass adoption. The peak is kind of the valley of death, unfortunately, for many startups, right? That's where many startups go to die because they don't find the capital or they don't find the market adoption. And our goal in climate tech then is to get all of these technologies through and mature them, right? So that we can use all of these options. So carbon capture and storage, the idea is very simple, right? Carbon capture, you want to take carbon out of the atmosphere. How do we do that? That's the one question. Then secondly, carbon, unfortunately, which is the primary greenhouse gas, right, is kind of a very reactive substance, and it tends to deteriorate even when it's bonded with other chemicals. It tends to be released back into the atmosphere pretty quickly, unfortunately. So storage is the second kind of big component of this. So on the left here, we see some very kind of early stage technologies and innovations that people are proposing. The very first one I have here is ocean fertilization and upwelling. So oceans actually are the biggest carbon sink on the planet, right? They store about 80% of the carbon that's stored on the planet is in oceans because water bonds with carbon, right? And so the way this kind of happens is in the ocean you have plankton, so little plants, right, floating in there, and through photosynthesis, carbon is captured. When the plankton dies, it's stored in the ocean then, right? It's trapped in there. Ocean fertilization is a theoretical kind of proposal to artificially fertilize large segments of the ocean to create more plankton growth so that this will capture carbon dioxide. Upwelling is a very similar kind of related concept. So in nature, there are natural currents which bring up nutrient-rich soil from the bottom of the ocean, and that will also create plankton growth, and there are proposals to artificially recreate this, right? Very controversial kind of topic because it will, of course, affect marine biology and the ecosystems in the ocean, which is why it's remained mostly theoretical at the moment. Enhanced weathering is another interesting kind of technology. So in nature, again, there is natural systems whereby when it rains, right, the water that's falling from the sky will also capture carbon on the way down. When that water runs over certain kinds of rocks, it reacts with those rocks chemically, and the carbon is bonded to them in a process called mineralization. So enhanced weathering is, again, a theoretical proposal to just kind of take a lot of this rock, crush it up, right, so you expose more surface area to the atmosphere so that more of this reaction will then take place. And interestingly enough, actually, the rock that's most commonly used for this is limestone and dolomite rock, right, so right from this region. Cool. Soil is another big carbon sink, right? Another place that stores carbon naturally. There's different technologies, different companies working on getting soil to store more carbon. Biochar, another kind of interesting technology which is growing a lot at the moment. So when you burn something, when you burn a natural material, right, you're creating charcoal, it's releasing carbon. But if you do the same thing in a low oxygen or low to no oxygen environment, that actually keeps the carbon in the material, and that carbon is locked into that material for, I want to say, a couple decades. So it's a relatively good storage mechanism. And using agricultural waste, you can turn that into biochar. So there's a lot of projects actually looking to scale this up at the moment. Then kind of on the more mature side, right, on the right side, your right, my left, of this slide, you'll see the most mature technology is called point capture. So there's actually a lot of systems for filtering out carbon in places that emit the most of it, in factories, cement plants, steel plants, chemical factories. But in many markets around the world, actually, there's very little incentive for these companies to install these kind of filters, even though it's a very mature, cheap technology. So in a lot of places around the world, this actually still isn't done, which is very unfortunate. Enhanced oil recovery is another very, very controversial technology or proposal in the environmental space, but which has also been in use for many, many years. When you're drilling for oil, right, you have natural wells that at some point will run out of oil. What oil and gas companies do to get the most out of these wells is they pump steam or other gas into that well to increase pressure in there. The pressure then pushes up the rest of the oil, right? The proposal then is to take carbon in its gaseous form and pump that underground, right? And of course, you'll be pushing out the rest of the oil, but as soon as that oil well is dry, you can kind of seal that off, and the carbon is stored underground then long term. It's very controversial, though, because you are kind of still facilitating getting more oil out of there, which, of course, a lot of environmentalists are rightfully against. Nature-based solutions, right? It's a very fancy word for tree planting or planting or using photosynthesis basically to capture carbon, right? This is the biggest natural cycle capturing carbon, And a lot of offsetting solutions these days. There's big tree planting projects, this kind of thing. So this is easy to scale up, but it's kind of reaching its peak at the moment, unfortunately. So what we've realized is that actually you could not plant enough trees on this planet at this point to capture all the carbon we need to capture. Besides that, there's other problems. So a lot of these projects, they promise you a reduction in carbon right now, but the truth is that most trees actually need to grow 10 years before they actually begin to really suck out carbon out of the atmosphere. So this is another problem. So we're just running into a lot of problems with nature-based solutions. So I don't think this should be the only kind of carbon capture and storage solution we're looking at. Now, the most promising one at the moment comes from a company called Climeworks, right? This is a direct air capture company. Their technology, they have big filters through which they pump air. They have a chemical process in there which separates out the CO2, and then the CO2 so they drill underground and pump this into a bed of rock where it slowly mineralizes then. Now, this is kind of probably the biggest climate tech company out there at the moment. So they just raised a 6th fundraising round where they raised 650 million Swiss francs. So it's a huge fundraising round. And they've built with that kind of the largest direct air capture plant in the world in Iceland called the Orca plant. Now, I also on these slides always have something called the green premium, right? So this is kind of a cost comparison, comparing these technologies to your standard kind of run-of-the-mill technology, and the whole point is to show that price, right? On this graph, price is an indicator of how mature our technology is. So when we get it down to the mature phase where it's cheap, and it's just as cheap as your carbon-emitting technology, then that's the point where we can really scale it up worldwide. So unfortunately, right now, direct air capture costs between 5 to 12 times more than carbon capturing through trees. So that's where we need to get that price kind of down to really scale it up. Okay, so that's that technology. Maybe you can let me know.
We got the results. Energy and data are first.
Okay.
The same. With
Are they tied, or?
43% tied with
Okay.
43%. I think data is mostly the most interesting, considering the
Data is
audience.
definitely the most relevant to us, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah,
yeah.
we can go to that. I don't know if I'll have time to get back
especially,
to energy.
yeah, as you see, he has prepared 6 or 7 different scenarios. So if you're interested, at the end of this event, go get him,
exactly.
meet him, ask him everything in front of a beer.
Also happy to share these if you want to look into any more of these technologies. Exactly. So data and climate insights, right? So these are the companies that are helping us to measure and quantify the problem and then do something about it, right? There's that kind of old management maxim, you can't manage what you can't measure, right? So the first point is kind of that. So in this, we have a lot of more mature technologies, right? I think data science isn't a new topic. Applying it to climate change is to some extent, but for the most part, this is all stuff that is being done already and that is being scaled up as we speak, which is great, of course. So I have kind of a few different fields, right, where data scientists are working on climate change. So one important thing is ESG ratings, right? So the financial service industry and a lot of different industries around the world, they like to have just one number, right, which represents kind of your green impact. So there's a lot of different rating companies which are producing ESG ratings at the moment. So that give you like one score of how good this company is doing on climate change or other sustainability issues. Demand forecasting is a very important issue in relation to energy industry, right? So we have this problem with renewable energies, wind and solar especially, that they're not available all the time, right? Solar energy is available when the sun shines, wind energy is available when the wind blows, and so there are times when this energy is readily available, when it's cheap to use, and there's times when it's not, right? And when you're filling that gap kind of with coal or other kind of fossil fuels. So demand forecasting is anything having to do with predicting when the most renewable energy is available and then shifting our demand, right, the load on the grid, on the energy network to that time. Carbon footprinting, so this is kind of about putting a carbon number, on one company, on one person, so you can really count, what is their impact on climate change. This is what my company works on, right? So this is already relatively mature as well. Life cycle assessments is putting that kind of same thing on a product. So calculating what is the carbon impact, of any given product, whether it's a projector or anything that you produce. So there's been a lot of debate kind of in the last 5 years about how do we best do this, what counts into it, what doesn't. That's finally getting settled, and we're starting to kind of do more of that actual work then, actually. Climate modeling, right, so very important field as well to predict, changing climate patterns in certain regions of the world. How is that going to affect that part of the world? Really helps us to kind of respond also to climate change, right? So the problem is we're probably in a scenario where we're not just going to be able to prevent it, we also need to make changes to adapt to it, right? And that's what climate modeling is really helping out with at the moment. Supply chain transparency is another big issue, right? So most big companies, they don't know their climate impact because they don't know their supply chain in depth enough, right? So they have people from all different places giving them input, and they're passing it through and maybe passing it along to another company. And they don't understand the carbon impact of their suppliers, and they don't understand their whole supply chain. So this is a big area as well for data scientists to get involved in climate change. And then here I've profiled kind of carbon accounting, right? So carbon accounting is then this kind of firm-wide, the same way you have to do your financial statements as a company. In the future, you're going to have to account for the carbon you produce. You're going to have to publish how much carbon your company emits. And obviously, you need to track that and then do something about it, right? And so this is actually a sector, I think this is one of the most heavily funded sectors or areas of climate tech at the moment, growing very fast. Plan A is one big leader in this space. It's a German climate tech company, right, that has a cloud-based carbon accounting software. And they also have predefined kind of reduction strategies to help companies reduce their carbon impact. And they recently raised an 8.6 million Series A round. So that's kind of the data. I'm at 30 minutes already, so I think we're probably going to have to skip some of these other technologies. But again, please approach me if you want to see this deck, if you want to talk about it. I'm happy to go into depth in any of these sectors. So then I want to get up to the last part of my presentation today, right? And that is how can you make a difference, right? So I'm speaking to you, as one tech person to another here. What can you be doing about this if you're convinced that this is an important problem that you want to get involved in? So I think that we as geeks are exactly the right people to be tackling this topic, right? And I think there's a few reasons for that. And some of the things on here, right, they're generalizations. It might not apply to every single one of you. But I think in general, for example, us geeks, us techies, right, we think very scientifically. And I think that's a very important thing in this fight against climate change, right? So I think that we really like to get into the numbers. We like to understand the problem. And I think, so already I don't have too many conversations with technologists who will tell me they don't believe in climate change because they believe the scientists, right? Other people don't, that's not a given actually, surprisingly enough. So I think that's important. And I think also when we talk about solutions, we want to know, quantitatively what does this do? Whereas unfortunately, a lot of people in the environmental movement, they think very emotionally, right? So they hear what sounds like a good idea and they'll jump right on board with that, but they won't question, is this actually having a big impact? Is this going to produce the impact realistically that you're promising us? So I think this is a very important character trait. I think within technology, we're also very good at scaling innovation. So we've done this, with lots of different technologies. This is always the goal in technology, right? To bring something through these proof of concept phases as quickly as possible, to try things out in the market, and get that to a point where we can sell it, where we can scale it very quickly, and to do that fast, right? So we have experience in this field already, and that's what we need to be doing with climate technologies. We're also excited about solving complex problems, right? So I feel like a lot of times when we're talking about these technologies, people's eyes will just kind of glaze over. It's too complicated for them. They don't want to get into all of this. And what I think is so exciting about working with tech people is that we get excited about complex problems, right? It's the exact opposite. We want to jump right into it. We want to get under the hood, and we want to fix it. I think a lot of us as technologists also adopt new technologies very early on, right? We like our new gadgets, we like new technologies, and it's very important for a technology, right, to find those early adopters, those people who are willing to spend a little bit more money at the beginning phases and get them through that valley of death before they can then kind of bring down the price point to the point where other people want to use this. And finally, I think that we as technologists, we work cross-sector. We're very deeply embedded, not just in the technology sector, but every single sector in the economy needs tech people at the moment, right? And they trust us, right? We are important parts of every company in every sector. So I think from that position, we can really push climate action within our own space. So here are some very kind of concrete ideas then about how you can get involved. So I've broken this down both as a techie, right, as an individual, and also I think as an employee, to some extent, we have some leverage as well. So as a tech person, the idea I've been pushing a little bit this whole time, right, is please, if you're looking to change your career, if you're currently looking for a new position, try to get involved in the climate tech space. So these companies, they really need the best and brightest minds at the moment to help us scale up this innovation fast and to get us through this crisis. So please consider working for a climate tech company if you are looking for something. There are other things, of course, you can do to innovate in this space. One very impactful thing, right, would be to start a company in this space. I know it's easier said than done, but just an idea. A smaller thing, right, that you can do that can still have an impact is to join a hackathon. So there's lots and lots of good hackathons at the moment focusing on climate solutions. So one great one that I like to plug is the Climate Hack by Climate Founders, which is an online hackathon held Europe-wide that they do every half a year that brings a lot of people together in this space. And actually, they have more innovators, more people who have ideas about climate tech than they have tech people signing up for this, right? So even if you don't have an idea, bringing your tech skills to the table here could be super helpful. But beyond that, there's huge prizes out there for this at the moment, right? People like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, they've opened up kind of competitions and hackathons where you can get involved in and you can win really millions of euros for your idea with the right idea. Now, I'd also encourage you, I think all of us kind of have, or a lot of us have an academic background. We've been through academia. I think this space still requires a lot of research, so that's something you could do. And then you might also be in a position to invest in climate tech. I don't know, maybe you have the money, the capital to be an angel investor in this space, but there are also solutions for buying shares in these companies, even when they're not public, right? There are private marketplaces that you could use to get invested here. Not investment advice, of course, from me, but something to consider. And of course, then you can be an early adopter of this clean tech, right? So in some cases, for example, what I was talking about with Climework, right? They actually have a supporter option where you can be purchasing small amounts of carbon reduction, right? But that just helps them to kind of scale this technology in the long run. And I think there's other opportunities here where you can do that. As an individual, then, I would also, of course, encourage you to take action to try and live more sustainably as much as that's possible, right? Where that is not possible, you can look into offsetting that. So you can pay projects to take out or reduce carbon in other areas of the world, and you can kind of offset that against your own impact a little bit, though obviously there are problems with that kind of approach. Donating money is actually also a very good way to do this, or to help out. The movement I was talking about at the beginning, effective altruism, what they found is actually that one of the most effective things you can do is to donate just a little bit of money to the right charity. And so they set up an organization called Giving Well, which tracks, with the proper numbers to show what impact a certain charity is actually having. Like for every euro that you give them, what impact are they generating with that, right? And they measure this out to the minute detail. And they also have this for environmental and climate causes. So I'd encourage you to check that out if you're interested. And then I think as an employee, right, you can kind of commit or try to pressure your workplace to think about climate change, to commit to a net zero plan. You can do your own carbon accounting for your company. You could drive that initiative within your company of calculating how much carbon your company actually produces, and then, of course, doing something about it, right? Trying to reduce that or offsetting it. Okay, I think that brings me then to the end of my presentation. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions then. Thank you.
Cool. This looks like real conferences with long applauses. Well done. couple of questions from the audience. There are plenty, so you get asked a number of them probably in front of a beer. First, since it's a topic of debate in Italy, especially these days, could nuclear energy be a solution to climate change?
Yeah, so that's a very, very controversial topic, of course. So I think, to be honest, I think that if you're phrasing it like that, could it be a solution to climate change? Yes, I think it can. Nuclear energy is a clean energy, right, that doesn't produce carbon or it doesn't produce greenhouse gases. When you put it in the broader environmental context, right, with nuclear waste as an issue, and of course there's also the safety issues with it, that's where you really start to kind of face questions. What excites me a lot more than nuclear fission technology, which is kind of the current predominant form of nuclear energy, there is a lot of companies who are working on nuclear fusion technology, right? And this is a much, much safer way to generate nuclear power. Unfortunately, still very, very early stages, but I really have big hopes for that as a technology, that will be the clean energy breakthrough that we need.
True, true. Was the process to get data about CO2 impact on a single payment? I guess this is connected to ecological, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, there's luckily a lot of data available these days, right? So there are big government-funded studies which really try to calculate carbon impact for a lot of different sectors, for a lot of different products. And our company works exactly with that kind of data, right? So there are big databases where you'll say, you know, they've calculated a consumer's average carbon footprint, and then you calculate their average spending into different categories, right? So, you know, maybe 50% of what I buy in a year is groceries, and my entire carbon footprint then attributable to that can be calculated, right? And so we break it down basically in grams of carbon per euro in a specific sector. It's not 100% exact, of course, right? It's a model, and we don't know, you know, basket level data. We don't know exactly what people are purchasing, but we do have averages that we can work with. And through that, we build kind of a model footprint.
Yeah, it's mostly estimations, yeah.
It's an estimation, it's a model. It's not perfect, but no model is perfect, but some models are useful, right?
Are there technology based on bacteria or synthetic biology to catch and transform CO2 that you're aware?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not sure if I am aware of any. I've heard. So I think there is some exploratory, I was reading a paper about fermentation processes, that those can also be used to capture carbon, but
I think with biogenetics they're doing stuff about that.
I'm sure they are, but I'm not sure I'm aware of it.
We might ask some people in the room, but yeah. If you're more passionate, we'll look into this and we'll let you know later on in the evening. Yeah,
I'd be happy to look it up for you, see what I can find. Yeah,
and then you add a slide. Yeah. How much do we need to change our lifestyle to meet the climate change goals? Can technology innovation only fully solve this problem?
Yeah, so it's actually very, very tough. So I think, I don't know the Italian number, unfortunately, but in Germany, right, our average carbon footprint per German is about 11 tons of CO2 per year. And I think the goal number that you'd have to get it down to is under 2 tons of carbon per year per person. So this is obviously like a massive, massive reduction, right? So I think there are a few simple things you can do to already reduce this a lot, right? But I think it's going to be very difficult to get down to that level. And so in terms of kind of like personal impact, I think one of the most effective things, probably the most effective thing you can do, is to cut red meat out of your diet. I'm not talking about going vegetarian, I'm not talking about going vegan, I'm just talking about no more beef, right? I think that's the thing that we found is kind of the most effective thing you can do personally, and then it kind of goes into flying less is also a big one, of course, so take the train more. But I think all of this, unfortunately, without technology won't add up to the reduction that we need.
Final question, I would say, based on your experience, how is the VC world reacting to the climate change issue? Are money going in a genuinely long-term impactful direction?
So venture capital has definitely seen this as an opportunity. We're scaling up the capital that's flowing into climate tech dramatically, which is great. We're still not at the place that we need to be, right? There's a statistic published about the funding gap for climate change. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's a really big number in the trillions. But for the most part, yeah, VC is seeing this as an opportunity. They're investing heavily. It's probably not quite enough, and we kind of have the problem that a lot of VC is a bit short-sighted, right? They want returns within the next, starting kind of within 3 years, up to 10 years is generally kind of what they're looking for. And unfortunately, a lot of climate tech solutions will likely require more long-term investment and won't be giving you a return that quickly a lot of times.
Cool. Thanks, Moritz. There are more questions to ask, but we'll keep them
Please,
for
yeah.
later on the night. Come meet him. A big applause again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, you can go get here, Moritz. You can go and get your headphone removed. Meanwhile, we take a small break. During this break, I have a few slides to show you that are very relevant to something we are announcing tomorrow. I would say, oh, he got my clicker. Okay, got it. Okay, so first, big news, we already have the next event. Next event is going to be on Wednesday, the 9th of November. We already got our speakers. One speaker confirmed, the second one is on the road, like it's coming to Trento walking. Save it on your calendar, we will publish very soon. The title is Free Software, and we will let you know everything in the upcoming weeks. Stay tuned on our channels to get to know about it. But we have something to show you tonight, and here it is. Let me show it. If it's working, yeah, it's working.
Thank you in Italian, like thank you. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's been a blast.
Like kiss and rain.
Okay, so this was the Speck&Tech Retreat 2018. Last time we showed you the video of 2019. It's actually opening, registration are opening tomorrow at 12 p.m. If you go to speck&tech/retreat on our website, you find the whole program. It's going to be from the 2nd to the 4th of December, a long weekend in the mountains with the best of your community. And you've got plenty of stuff, as you've seen, jacuzzi, good food, great people, talks, workshops, sauna, outdoor, a bunch of stuff. You find the whole program and all the information on anything. We kept the same price as back in 2019, despite the cost of energy and the inflation, just to say. So it's 160 euros per person with all that bunch of stuff. So nights, food, bed, transfer, gourmet dinner, everything. You just find it. If you're a student, even better, 120 euros for the first 15 tickets. So you can get it tomorrow at 12 p.m. It's starting. So be there. We have only 50 seats. So I guess they're going to be sold out very soon. If you want to be within these people, get to our website, speck&tech/retreat. Tickets open tomorrow in exactly, now it's 10 p.m., so 14 hours. Thanks for the introduction. Got into the second talk. Floriano on stage.
Buonasera, buonasera a tutti e a tutte. Sì, mi sembra un po' strano passare all'italiano, ma insomma penso che si possa fare un buon compromesso tra italiano con cui parlo e inglese con cui sono le slide, quindi se qualcuno magari non è proprio ferratissimo in italiano può seguire sulle slide. Stasera in realtà metto assieme, in questa presentazione metto assieme il mio lavoro e quello che è la mia grande passione per i diritti umani. Quindi io sono, diciamo, come lavoro sono un tecnologo accademico alla Università di Bolzano in un laboratorio che si chiama Smart Data Factory, che si occupa di trasferimento tecnologico, quindi di progetti con aziende. Ma anche sono da più di 20 anni un attivista di Amnesty International, che è uno dei più grandi movimenti per i diritti umani nel mondo. E di questo movimento sono il coordinatore regionale per Veneto e Trentino Alto Adige. Quindi io per lavoro mi occupo di tecnologia, di intelligenza artificiale e mi occupo anche di diritti umani. Quindi cercherò di parlare, diciamo, di darvi un'introduzione su quelle che sono le connessioni tra intelligenza artificiale e diritti umani e quali sono i lati positivi e i lati negativi dell'intelligenza artificiale per i diritti umani. Quindi, prima di tutto vorrei, come ha fatto il mio predecessore, solo darvi una piccolissima introduzione sul laboratorio di cui faccio parte, dell'Università di Bolzano. È un laboratorio che si occupa appunto di realizzare in collaborazione con aziende applicazioni che siano innovative nel senso di essere in grado di acquisire, processare e analizzare in maniera intelligente grandi quantità di dati. Quindi promuoviamo il trasferimento tecnologico, quindi vediamo come si applica la ricerca fatta nella nostra facoltà di informatica, di computer science. Collaboriamo con aziende e con enti pubblici con lo scopo di fare innovazione soprattutto nell'area locale ma anche ovviamente in generale. E questo in vari campi che sono quelli su cui lavora la nostra facoltà. Quindi data management, human computer interactions, sistemi di raccomandazione, di supporto alle decisioni, computer visions, software engineering, cloud and edge computing, metodi numerici, tecnologie di bioingegneria e business process management. Queste sono le nostre competenze e il nostro laboratorio si occupa appunto di portare queste competenze in progetti concreti con le aziende. Ok, dicevo che sono anche un attivista di Amnesty International. Probabilmente avete sentito parlare di Amnesty International molte volte. Per chi magari non ci conoscesse bene, anche qui do due parole di introduzione. Quindi Amnesty è un movimento globale con sedi, sezioni in circa 150 paesi del mondo e che coinvolge circa 10 milioni di persone. Che cos'è il nostro obiettivo? Il nostro obiettivo è attivarci, fare campagne per un mondo dove i diritti umani siano rispettati e tutti ne possano godere. E quello che diciamo noi, che il nostro motto è better to light a candle than curse the darkness, meglio accendere una candela che maledire l'oscurità. Perché questo? Perché comunque con lo sforzo collettivo di tutti noi assieme, tutti noi possiamo accendere una candela per dare una speranza a tante persone i cui diritti umani vengono violati. E cosa facciamo? Beh, noi ci occupiamo di diritti umani collegati a tanti ambiti, di cui il primo che mi viene in mente qui, collegato a quello che dicevamo prima, che diceva prima Mo, è le violazioni dei diritti umani legate ai cambiamenti climatici. Quando un cambiamento climatico può provocare una siccità, un'alluvione, una siccità e un'alluvione provoca persone che devono muoversi, devono cambiare stato, queste persone si spostano e quindi diventano rifugiati, richiedenti asilo e migranti. Il diritto di vivere in uno stato, in una situazione dove si possa vivere in maniera dignitosa viene negata, e quindi noi ci attiviamo per queste situazioni. Situazioni di discriminazione, ad esempio per orientamento sessuale, libertà di espressione. Abbiamo appena fatto partire una campagna che si chiama Protect the Protest, quindi il diritto che tutti noi abbiamo di esprimere le nostre opinioni protestando, e questo va protetto, è la nostra libertà di espressione. Due temi diciamo dei classici di Amnesty International: tortura e pena di morte. Aboliamo la pena di morte in tutto il mondo, evitiamo che ci siano torture, controlli delle armi o anche sparizioni forzate. Questi sono alcuni degli ambiti. E come lavoriamo? Lavoriamo attraverso un'opera di ricerca fatta da ricercatori che vanno a investigare quali sono le violazioni dei diritti umani tramite dei rapporti dettagliati e approfonditi rispetto a quelle che sono le violazioni. Questo è una cosa a cui Amnesty tiene molto, l'accuratezza delle fonti delle informazioni. Facciamo opera di advocacy e lobbying verso l'autorità, verso gli stati, quindi attraverso i nostri rapporti possiamo andare dai decision maker, dai governi, per dire quelle che sono le violazioni che stanno commettendo e riportarli ad esempio agli impegni che hanno preso firmando dei trattati internazionali che magari non rispettano. E poi c'è tutta la parte di campagne d'azione, quindi attraverso petizioni, proteste fatte da persone comuni, noi ci attiviamo perché le violazioni dei diritti umani si fermino. Quindi dicevamo, petizioni, queste sono le petizioni attualmente attive sul sito di Amnesty Italia, ad esempio abbiamo vari casi, questo è il nuovo premio Nobel per la pace, che è stato un prigioniero di coscienza di Amnesty, ad esempio. Abbiamo fatto attivazioni in Italia anni fa per introdurre una legge sul reato di tortura che è stata effettivamente poi introdotta. Questi siamo noi attivisti a Padova per una manifestazione per l'Afghanistan, per la situazione in Afghanistan, quello che è successo l'anno scorso. Facciamo anche Human Rights Education, quindi educazione ai diritti umani andando nelle scuole. Ho combinato un pasticcio probabilmente. Sono riuscito a bloccare. Ok, quindi Amnesty International fa questo. Perché Amnesty International ha cominciato a occuparsi anche di quello che è l'impatto dell'intelligenza artificiale e della tecnologia in generale sui diritti umani? Ma per il fatto che comunque si sta sempre parlando di più di intelligenza artificiale e diritti umani e dei rischi e delle opportunità che l'intelligenza artificiale dà, cioè i rischi che dell'intelligenza artificiale per i diritti umani e le opportunità che dà per la loro difesa. Vabbè, se uno va sui giornali trova un sacco di informazioni un po' scritte a caso su quello che può essere la pericolosità dell'intelligenza artificiale per i diritti, per la libertà delle persone. Io sono andato a vedermi se c'era qualche, diciamo, ricerca accademica e ho trovato questo articolo in cui in qualche modo si fa vedere come, diciamo, si comincia a parlare anche a livello accademico di intelligenza artificiale e diritti umani, e come gli argomenti di cui si parla con più frequenza in queste ricerche sono questi che vedete indicati qua. Quindi, diciamo, quello di cui si parla di più sono i sistemi ad arma autonoma, tipo i droni, tanto per capirci, oppure quello che possono essere l'analisi dei big data, oppure anche, diciamo, algoritmi predittivi che possono essere quelli di Facebook, che promuovono determinati contenuti piuttosto che altri. E qui, scusate, qua non si vede bene, comunque questo articolo fa una grossa lista di quelli che sono vari ambiti di applicazione, quelli che sono gli effetti dell'intelligenza artificiale su questi ambiti di applicazione, quelli che sono i diritti che possono venire protetti da queste applicazioni e quelli che sono i diritti che possono essere minacciati. Comunque, diciamo, poi nelle slide magari potete andare a vedere il dettaglio, adesso qui non si vede e poi non ho tempo per andare troppo in dettaglio. Quindi che cosa ha fatto Amnesty qualche anno fa? Ha diciamo, istituito un'unità che si chiama Amnesty Tech e qual è l'obiettivo di Amnesty Tech? Amnesty Tech sta lavorando per rispondere a questa domanda, cioè come sono, come ci appaiono, come sono influenzati i nostri diritti nell'era digitale. E questo viene fatto attraverso, diciamo, coinvolgendo diverse figure professionali. Quindi abbiamo ricercatori, abbiamo tecnologi, abbiamo anche hacker, abbiamo persone che lavorano su advocacy, e l'approccio è quello di avere un coinvolgimento della comunità e quindi lavorare direttamente con attivisti per i diritti umani e per la società civile, e in modo da costruire la loro capacità tecnologica di difendersi da attacchi che possono venire dalla tecnologia, come possono essere la repressione digitale e la sorveglianza a distanza. E poi quello che propongono sono delle soluzioni politiche, e anche promuovere un'innovazione nella tecnologia e nell'intelligenza artificiale in particolare, per trovare degli strumenti per fare meglio la campagna e la ricerca di Amnesty nel campo dei diritti umani. Adesso vi faccio vedere alcuni esempi, diciamo, su cui questa unità di Amnesty Tech ha lavorato, ovviamente senza andare troppo nei dettagli. Comunque, diciamo, uno dei primi ambiti in cui Amnesty Tech ha lavorato è quello di investigare, di indagare quelli che sono attacchi digitali nei confronti di attivisti per i diritti umani e di giornalisti. Diciamo in molti stati, questo è il caso del Marocco, ma ce ne sono altri come Pakistan, come Egitto, come insomma diversi altri nel mondo. I governi che cosa fanno? Cercano di far installare con l'inganno dei software per spiare le attività digitali dei difensori dei diritti umani. Ad esempio Mati Monhib, che è un difensore dei diritti umani marocchino, è stato messo sotto sorveglianza dal governo del Marocco attraverso l'invio di alcuni SMS, diciamo, che contenevano un link fraudolento tramite il quale, cliccandoci su inavvertitamente, veniva installato sul device della persona quello che è il Pegasus, che è uno spyware prodotto dal NSO Group, che è un'azienda israeliana. Quindi e questo è solo uno dei casi che si sono visti. Quindi questa persona aveva diciamo il sospetto di poter essere hackerato e quindi si è rivolto ad Amnesty International, la quale tramite i propri esperti è riuscita a capire appunto che c'era stato questo attacco informatico nei suoi confronti e che quindi lui era stato sorvegliato contro la sua volontà dal governo. Un altro caso è riconoscimento facciale. Questo è un caso che diciamo strumenti per riconoscimento facciale ce ne abbiamo sempre di più. E questo è un caso che riguarda la città di New York e Amnesty ha collegato a questa campagna, diciamo ha aperto una campagna che si chiama Ban the Scan, quindi diciamo per eliminare questa sorveglianza di massa fatta attraverso le telecamere di sorveglianza che ci sono nelle strade. Quindi cosa è successo? Ci sono stati ingaggiati dei volontari digitali chiamati, che hanno identificato oltre 25.000 telecamere che sono agli incroci della città di New York. E una cosa che è stata vista è che queste telecamere erano molto più dense in aree dove diciamo, la polizia era nota per avere un approccio razzista nel fermare e perquisire le persone. Quindi ad esempio i neri venivano perquisiti molto più dei bianchi e così via. Quindi questo si è anche visto che in quartieri dove era più alta la proporzione, la percentuale di non bianchi, più alta era la concentrazione di questi dispositivi di riconoscimento, di queste telecamere, le cui immagini si potevano utilizzare per riconoscimento facciale. E quindi la polizia aveva basato la sua azione anche sul riconoscimento di queste che venivano fatte attraverso questa tecnologia, senza però fornire nessuna spiegazione su come effettivamente venivano utilizzati questi dati. Quindi Amnesty International ha fatto un appello alla Corte dello Stato Supremo di New York nel 2020 e come conseguenza la Corte ha obbligato alla polizia a rendere pubblici i dati su come funziona questo sistema di sorveglianza facciale e come vengono utilizzati. È stato anche fatto un sito web legato a questa campagna in cui si può, eccolo qua. A questo punto, ad esempio, posso collegarmi sul sito web, posso introdurre 2 luoghi di New York, Times Square o magari l'Empire, proviamo a mettere qua l'Empire, e supponiamo che io devo andare da Times Square all'Empire, il software è in grado di visualizzare quelle che sono le telecamere lungo il percorso. Attraverso la story possiamo vedere, c'è una spiegazione, mi dice per l'85% della mia strada sono esposto a riconoscimento facciale che viola la mia privacy. Oppure qui possiamo anche vedere durante il percorso qual è il rischio che io ho nei vari tratti del percorso, e quindi il rischio va da molto basso al molto alto, quindi dal bianco vuol dire molto basso verso il rosso vuol dire molto alto, e questo è a disposizione di tutti per avere un'idea di quelle che sono il livello di sorveglianza che c'è nella città di New York. Possiamo passare a... Un altro esempio che volevo farvi vedere è quello che Amnesty... è una ricerca che ha fatto Amnesty nel Darfur per praticamente fare il riconoscimento automatico di quelle che sono le zone in cui ci sono state dei combattimenti che hanno portato alle distruzioni degli insediamenti. Quindi dal Darfur è dal 2003 che c'è un conflitto sanguinoso tra il governo e i gruppi di opposizione, e nel 2016 c'è stata una recrudescenza di questo conflitto. Quindi questa è stata un'ondata di violenza che ha portato all'attacco e alla distruzione da parte del governo sudanese, dei suoi alleati, di un numero countless, quindi di tantissimi villaggi. Quindi come avere evidenza di quelle che sono state le distruzioni? Chiaro che mandare dei ricercatori sul posto, a parte che è pericoloso, e poi comunque non si poteva avere una copertura totale del territorio. Quindi che cosa è stato fatto? È stato addestrare un algoritmo di machine learning in maniera tale da poter identificare quelle che sono le zone in cui ci sono state delle distruzioni rispetto a quelle invece in cui ci sono state e quelle in cui ci sono invece degli esseri umani, degli abitanti. Quindi sono state prese immagini satellitari e sono state etichettate da dei volontari che hanno per ciascuna piastrella, per ciascuno quadratino, sono andati a dire se c'era stato se questa piastrella rappresentava una zona con delle distruzioni, una zona senza distruzione o una zona neutra, una zona abitata. È stata fatta questo lavoro di annotazione e poi è stato addestrato un algoritmo di machine learning, una rete neurale, e poi è stato appunto utilizzato il risultato di questo addestramento per andare a vedere su aree di territorio su cui non si sapeva niente se c'erano state effettivamente qual era la loro situazione. Quindi il modello è stato in grado di identificare la presenza umana e le zone distrutte e le zone miste, quindi che sono parzialmente distrutte, per un totale di circa 500.000 km quadrati. I risultati sono stati molto buoni. Questa è una matrice di confusione per chi se ne intende, quindi questo è questa era bisognava andare a capire se una determinata area era abitata oppure no. e quindi diciamo ci ha azzeccato, la correttezza era effettivamente era molto alta, i falsi positivi, quindi diciamo i posti che sono stati classificati come disabitati quando erano abitati sono stati il 3%, e quelli che sono stati classificati come abitati mentre non lo erano solo il 6%. Quindi questo è un risultato veramente buono. Per il riconoscimento di quelle che erano le aree distrutte o non distrutte, anche qui dei risultati molto buoni, un po' meno buoni di quelli precedenti, ma comunque molto alti. Quindi diciamo un'area che non era distrutta è stata classificata come distrutta solo una volta su 10 e solo 5 volte su 100 è stata classificata come non distrutta quando in realtà era distrutta. Quindi anche in questo caso abbiamo avuto dei risultati buonissimi. Poi è stato fatto un software che permetteva di zoomare, qui se riesci a farmelo partire, ecco vabbè, qui fa solo vedere come fosse possibile zoomare sulle varie aree, e là a sinistra vedete per ciascuna area qual era la probabilità che il sistema dava perché l'area fosse distrutta o meno. Quindi si poteva, partendo diciamo da molto in alto, avvicinarci tantissimo e riuscire a capire. E questo ha aiutato molto Amnesty a capire effettivamente l'entità le cause della guerra e quali erano state le distruzioni fatte dalle forze governative, e questo ha potuto portare poi a fare dei rapporti molto dettagliati sulla situazione nel Darfur. Stiamo andando verso la fine e volevo solo farvi vedere qua un esempio di un progetto italiano che si chiama Barometro dell'odio. Quindi qui si è andati a vedere quali erano i discorsi d'odio su internet, e in pratica sono state monitorate 6 milioni di contenuti su Facebook e Twitter, e sono state osservate 24 pagine o profili di politici, di giornali, attivisti, persone del mondo della cultura. Cosa si è andato a monitorare? Si è andato a monitorare, qui si tratta circa, questo è dell'anno scorso, e quando si parlava molto della legge sul cittadinanza, quella comunemente detta ius soli. E quindi si è andato a vedere ma come si parla di questo argomento su internet, e sono stati catalogati oltre 27.000 contenuti unici pubblicati su queste pagine che sono state osservate e come commenti a questi post. Questa è stata fatta una catalogazione a mano da volontari, da 50 persone che sono stati attivisti del territorio, forse qualcuno di noi è anche in sala, non lo so, può darsi, infatti mi sembrava, del territorio in senso di tutta Italia. Sono stati catalogati il tema, l'accezione, l'assenza, la presenza di problematicità, quanto fosse d'odio il linguaggio su cui si parlava dell'argomento. E poi c'è stata fatta un'analisi da esperti di tutti questi contenuti catalogati. I dati, allora, innanzitutto è stato un tema invisibile, solo lo 0,5% dei contenuti esaminati riguardava questo tema, però di questi pochi contenuti 4 su 5 sono stati negativi, e 1 su 10 è problematico, quindi c'era un discorso che rasentava il discorso d'odio. E poi c'era un utilizzo, c'era un'associazione fuorviante tra il discorso della cittadinanza ai minori minori di cittadinanza straniera nati in Italia o trasferitesi qui, diciamo, molto giovani rispetto a quelli che sono i flussi migratori. E questo è stato uno studio della sezione italiana di Amnesty, in cui tutta questa classificazione è stata fatta a mano. Il prossimo passo potrebbe essere quello di utilizzare degli algoritmi di classificazione automatica dello speech. Ci sono diverse tecniche che sono state sviluppate e si sta pensando di utilizzarli probabilmente in nuove versioni del barometro dell'odio. Quindi mi avvio alla conclusione con questi pochi esempi, spero di avervi dato una carrellata, ma per dirvi che cosa c'è poi. Diciamo ci sono tutta una serie di iniziative che vorrebbero andare a costruire, diciamo, il rapporto tra società e tecnologia. E a me piace citarvi qui questo manifesto del Digital Humanism fatto a Vienna da una serie di ricercatori, di professori, di scienziati, molti informatici, e diciamo ve ne faccio solo vedere un pezzo. Questo manifesto afferma che che le tecnologie dovrebbero essere in accordo con i valori umani e i loro bisogni, invece di diciamo formare loro, plasmare loro quelle che sono gli esseri umani. Quindi il compito di chi lavora sulla tecnologia e sulle tecnologie digitali in particolare non è solo diciamo, evidenziare quelli che sono i rischi della tecnologia, dell'informazione e della comunicazione, ma anche incoraggiare un'innovazione che sia centrata sugli esseri umani. Quindi dobbiamo fare in modo che la tecnologia sia a nostra misura e non noi essere soggiogati a quella che è la tecnologia. Questo è come messaggio finale che vi lascio. Ulteriori informazioni sul nostro lavoro all'Università di Bolzano, c'è il sito e la pagina LinkedIn di Smart Data Factory. Su Amnesty International, questo è il sito del segretariato internazionale, questo è il sito di Amnesty Italia. Volete diventare degli attivisti per i diritti umani, attivarvi per Amnesty International? Qui a Trento c'è un gruppo Amnesty, questa è la sua pagina Facebook. A Rovereto c'è un altro gruppo Amnesty e questa è la sua pagina Facebook. Quindi lì trovate tutti i contatti, poi potete anche contattare me se avete bisogno di maggiori informazioni, sono molto contento di darvela. Grazie mille e se c'è qualche domanda sono qua.
Grazie di cuore Floriano. Allora, ci sono parecchie domande sul discorso delle telecamere e il riconoscimento facciale. Allora, la prima. Se le telecamere aiutano a ridurre il crimine, perché sono un problema? Quale sarebbe un'alternativa?
Beh, le telecamere possono essere un aiuto a ridurre il crimine, è vero. Il problema sta nel fatto che spesso di queste immagini delle telecamere non si sa che cosa ne viene fatto. Quindi può darsi che queste immagini delle telecamere finiscono in schedari di cui non sappiamo l'esistenza, che poi possono essere tirate fuori al momento opportuno e quando riconoscono la nostra faccia in un posto magari dicono «Ah, quel giorno lì eri là e quindi adesso sei qui» e magari c'eri per caso e in realtà fanno una connessione. soprattutto quando si va in piazza a protestare, questo può essere un problema.
Ecco, esattamente a questo proposito arriva un'altra domanda. Il riconoscimento facciale potrebbe essere sfruttato invece come strumento di sicurezza concreto garantendo l'anonimato dei dati by design?
Potrebbe essere?
Allora, aspettate che l'ho persa. È scomparsa. Oh.
Non sono sicuro di aver capito qual è la domanda.
Il riconoscimento facciale potrebbe essere sfruttato invece come strumento di sicurezza concreto, garantendo l'anonimato dei dati by design?
Strumento di sicurezza concreto.
Quindi trovando fondamentalmente magari un modo per ovviare le problematiche appena menzionate.
Sì, però by design, come lo facciamo il design? E qui ritorna al grande discorso del manifesto di Vienna, cioè dobbiamo metterci d'accordo su come si possono usare questi dati, qual è il loro scopo, con quali fini, insomma tutte le leggi sulla privacy, GDPR varie sono lì, però hanno un sacco di problemi che ben sappiamo.
Ok. Poi, quella più votata. Esiste un modo alternativo per far sentire la propria voce in merito ad una tematica senza protestare? Se esistono, tali soluzioni sono equivalentemente efficaci?
Allora, ci sono, non so, mi vengono in mente che ci sono un sacco di siti per petizioni online, change.org è uno di questi, Amnesty International anche ha suoi appelli online. Sono utili? Sì, però penso che comunque farsi vedere in piazza, io sono un po' all'antica probabilmente, credo che per farsi vedere in piazza, prendersi l'impegno di andare, farsi vedere, dire sono qui per questo motivo, sia importante, sia ancora importante.
Ok. Qualcuno chiede, as tech people, how can we join Amnesty? Immagino seguendo i riferimenti che ci hai dato.
Sì, allora, se qualcuno è di qua, basta che vada sulle pagine Facebook di Trento e Rovereto, se no sul sito di Amnesty Italia, se no sul sito internazionale ci sono tutte le informazioni.
Poi, curiosità molto diffusa. Tu hai lavorato su alcuni di questi progetti tech? Che modo? Ce lo puoi dire?
Mi sarebbe piaciuto tanto, ma purtroppo no. No. Mettere assieme, diciamo, lavoro su progetti del genere col mio lavoro effettivo mi spiacerebbe tanto, non ci sono ancora riuscito, spero di riuscirci, non troppo avanti.
State anche lavorando sull'attuale conflitto ucraino-russo?
Con queste tecnologie qua o in generale? Diciamo Amnesty ha aperto tutta una serie di campagne sulla situazione ucraina. In realtà Amnesty, una delle prime cose che ha fatto sfruttando le tecnologie satellitari è stato quello di andare a vedere come si era svolto, diciamo, l'evoluzione del conflitto, quello del 2014 tra Russia e Ucraina, e lì erano proprio andati a vedere come ci fossero stati degli dispiegamenti di truppe lungo il confine, quindi ci ha lavorato già tanto tempo fa su queste cose, è stato uno dei primi esempi di Amnesty Tech.
Ok, perfetto. Il dataset dell'Hate Barometer è open?
Non lo so.
Ok.
Però posso informarmi, se la persona che ha fatto la domanda mi contatta, posso
Esatto.
dirglielo. Non so se è qui.
Chi l'ha fatto si faccia magari avanti.
Sei tu? Posso chiedere alla Amnesty Italia se è open e dirtelo.
Perfetto, direi che magari se avete altre domande potete magari avvicinare Floriano con una birra o qualcosa e gli fate tutto l'interrogatorio che volete. Credo sarà lieto di rispondervi. Grazie ancora per questo intervento molto interessante.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Floriano. Hope you enjoy the night. We have the final few things to tell you. First, tomorrow at 12, we are opening the tickets for the retreat. Be there. Otherwise, you're missing the event of the year or the decade. Call it as you like. No, okay, or the 5 years since it's the first one after 2019. Anyway, second, if you want to contribute to what we do to the association to pay back the beers, if you listen now, they're preferring. We are slicing the spec right at the moment. If you want to contribute somehow to what we do to the association, go there. We have some people waving at the moment that can get your donation. Anything helps. Or you can buy our brand. Yeah, we have some t-shirts. We have t-shirts from last editions. They're great. They're like carbon neutral material. They last a life. Like my sister has the one from 2018 now, wearing it, and it's brand new almost. Final point of the night. We're asking your help to stack the chairs and to put them on a side. We will guide you. Those with the green chairs, we take them and we put them inside here. And no, wait. Oh, change in that direction. We put them down at the entrance, the green one. The red one, we just stick them one on top of the other here on the side. We are bringing the beers and we enjoy the night and we keep on. Good night. Enjoy.
Thank you, everyone.